for tuning in to the Medevac podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes and their families. I'm one of your hosts, David Reid.
And I'm your other host, Christian Meyers. Thank you very much for joining us this week on the Medevac podcast. If you're new here, there's a price for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member if you get something out of today's episode. And let me tell you, you're going to get something out of this episode. If you've not seen part 1 with Bob Mitchell, go back to last week's, check it out. There is a ton of information, fantastic stories about some military operations that are rarely spoken about, including time Bob spent in Berlin performing different types of tradecraft and the whole evolution of special forces during the 1970s and 80s. But Bob, welcome back to the show.
Welcome back.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you. So last time we left off kind of at Berlin, and I think you said you wanted to wrap up.
There was a couple of things I just want to mention about Berlin.
Yeah, of course.
Before we jump ahead. The qualifications, I mentioned the qualifications. I left out one of them, and that was you had to look like a German.
Okay.
So we had no people in our unit that did not look like a German. Okay. That was absolutely vital. And we actually got in trouble with our what we call the RREO people, which is Race Relations Equal Opportunity Group of Berlin. They kept harassing us because we didn't have anybody that matched their criteria for a diversified unit.
Okay.
And it was we didn't explain. We said, we'll work on that. But the second thing, you could not have a tattoo anywhere, period. Tattoos were, I say they're verboten because you can be identified with a tattoo.
Yeah.
And no matter what it said, even if it was just a flower or something, now you have an extra identity. If you're changing your alias story, well, one thing you can't change is a tattoo.
Yep.
So, I used to coach our team members later on, don't get a tattoo. I finally gave up. Tattoos have become ubiquitous, it seems like, and I tell guys, just stay away from special operations that will get you in any kind of deep cover because you're going to give yourself away.
Yeah.
You can have the tattoo or you can have that, but you can't have both. We had a guy show up in Berlin that didn't know that, and he had a tattoo on his forearm. He heard about it once he got there, and he spent the next 3 days wearing a bandage on his arm, hoping nobody would see it.
Ugh.
And then when he wasn't wearing the bandage, he was scrubbing it with salt.
Yeah.
He scrubbed that tattoo off, turned his arm raw, but he finally got rid of the tattoo.
Wow.
Because he didn't want to leave.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's
By the way,
commitment.
this particular, I won't give you his name. He was one of the first Dead A guys, Delta Force guys. Okay. He was in the first class, plank holder of Delta Force people.
Wow.
That's incredible. And
He wouldn't have got it if he had kept that tattoo.
the determination as well to just stay within that. I
Yeah.
mean, dedication. Absolutely.
The second thing I want to talk about is I've mentioned radios. We used the world's oldest radios because they worked. Our radios were actually used. The ones we used the most were during the OSS days. They were OSS vintage crystal. You carried a crystal if you want to change frequency.
Yeah.
Pull this one out, put that one in.
Yeah.
I mean, old. They had. They were designed to work in Europe. They were. If you had a plug, you would plug in with a European connector.
Okay.
As their standard. You had an adapter if you had to be in some place that took the American. Had a hand crank generator. You could do this. It could hook up to any type of a battery, 6-volt to 12-volt. You could plug a car battery to it and make it work. And HF radio was, unlike modern radios, which are line of sight, this thing could go up, bounce off of something, and come back down.
Yeah.
Maximum wattage of this radio, which was called the ANGRC 109, was maximum wattage was 12 watts. 12 watts. And we would regularly communicate from Berlin, day or night, to England on that radio.
That's
no
impressive.
problem. It worked every time.
Did it have any sort of cryptology? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Crypto was done with what's known as a one-time pad.
Mm.
You have any idea what that is?
I imagine it's physically hand jamming the cryptology between the two.
Well, a one-time pad is a pad that exists, and you can only use it one time. The people that issue the pads, and right now I'm escaping what they're called, but would issue two pads, one for the base station and one for the detachment,
Mm-hmm.
the operating detachment. And it was just a pad of paper made out of a special paper that could easily be swallowed. I guess it was rice paper.
Okay.
You could actually eat it if you had to. And it was printed in 5-letter random groups of letters. And we used a thing called a trigraph. A trigraph would be able to convert a clear text to, you write a clear text on top of the page in the pad.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would derive a third letter.
Okay.
And we could memorize all the combinations. I memorized 90% of the combinations. Like if I was to say the letter B was the clear text, and in the pad it was A, the actual letter that we would transmit was a Y.
Okay, so the 3-letter difference.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And we had a chart that came with every pad that would actually show you those combinations. But like I said, I memorized most of them.
Yeah.
90% I could do it in my head. And the chart never changed. And it's called a trigraph. It's also on Wikipedia. Look it up. When we couldn't use that, we used a book version. So if you and I both have the same book, same issue, same volume,
Mm-hmm.
We can use the book. The hard part about either one of these is what pad page are you on, or what book page are you on.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be transmitted some way. And there's a way to do that. I won't go into it. But it made it easy to send coded messages that nobody could break. They couldn't be broken there's no computer in the world could break it. There were people who will argue with that. And I recently read a book about cryptology that makes me think maybe they could. But our messages were usually short, so it'd be kind of hard. But we were always we always would transmit to England.
Okay.
That's where our radio was always going. So
And that's crazy that you, also keep up to date with some of this stuff. You're reading books about it.
Mhm.
And is that like filling you on some information?
I ran across this book just last year, and it was about a woman who was hired by the Coast Guard to during the days of rum running. And the rum runners were using coded messages to make their rendezvous points, and the Coast Guard wanted to find them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she got so good at this that when World War II started, the Navy took her, took her away from the Coast Guard, and she became. And her husband was doing the same thing for the Army, by the way. They were a pair, and I can't think of their names right now, but you could look it up. It's an excellent book. They were always able to break a message, no matter how little information they had. They could do it, and people would come and tell them, "There's no way you could have broken this. You made this up." Well, we did break it. We did. She was just really, really good.
Yeah.
And because she got her start by the Coast Guard,
How funny is that?
and she became so valuable. And when the war ended, she lost her job.
Yeah, somebody so valuable.
They weren't running rum anymore, and the war was over, so she had no work to do. So she retired from the Coast Guard as a civilian.
Okay.
She got a retirement out of it. She worked over 20 years, starting from Prohibition all the way up to into World War II.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
So
20, 25 years at least.
anyway, so crypto, And we would do our dead letter drops. We would use a thing called the Jocasta system. That's also in the Wikipedia. It's if you have to come up with something off the top of your head and you don't have a book, you could use Jocasta. How do you tell the person that you're sending to that you're using Jocasta? And that would be the difficult part. But dead letter drop. Okay, real quick in Berlin, you have all your dead letter drops were recorded and given names, code names. And there's three components to a dead letter drop. There's the load signal and the unload signal, and they can be the same thing or they can be two different things, and the actual drop itself. So a load signal, and we had to stop doing this because apparently every spy in Berlin was doing the same thing. Take a little grease pencil, and you make a mark on a lamppost. Okay? That's the load signal. This particular lamppost, if it has this mark on it, there's a message in the dead letter drop.
Okay.
A block away, there is a park bench with a magnetic container under it that has a message in it. A block away, usually you want these things linear, there's the unload signal, the grease pencil. Well, we started noticing grease pencils marks all over Berlin, so we realized this is not working.
Yeah, everybody's doing the same
All the spies
thing.
in Berlin were using grease pencils, so we came up with other things. And I found one that I really liked. It was every lamp post in Berlin has an access to the wiring, and it was always locked with a key. Unlike ours, where people can just take a screwdriver and get in there and pull all the copper out of it. They actually used a key, and there was a little cover over the keyhole to keep water from getting in there. And these covers could be turned like this, and they would stay put. And so I started using turning the thing from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock to be a load signal. Of course, you run the problem of somebody coming along and turning it back.
Sure. Yeah.
But it never happened, but it was always a contingency. So for that reason, they didn't like my idea. But we used thumbtacks. We used tape for these things. But the reason you need an unload signal is because if you put the message in there, you don't want to leave it there. And there's a time on this. If after 24 hours no one has activated the unload signal, you go and retrieve the message.
Okay, I see.
You can't just leave it there forever.
So the original person would do the pre, and then post would be the person who receives the message. Okay.
And you both have the information about the dead drop. It's going to be part of your operating plan. And we wanted to never actually communicate person to person if we had to with other elements. So you might have a command element and an operational element. You got to talk to each other. And the only way you can do it is either send a message to England and have them send it to you. That works. Or use a dead letter drop, which is quicker and easier.
Sure. A little bit more direct.
And every day you would go and check the load signal. Every day you check it. And if it's ever loaded, then you go get something. And the only reason it wouldn't get picked up is if they were unable to pick it up.
That makes sense.
And this is just one of many methods that you used in Tradecraft.
Yeah.
And we practice this daily. There's all kinds of things we did in Berlin. So
Yeah,
to
I
keep
can
this
imagine.
stuff going and teaching the new guys. And it just kept going and going. I'm sure today, somewhere in the world, they're still doing the same stuff with dead letter drops.
Yeah, that's the pretty interesting part of hearing these stories too, and the ranges of when you served and some of our other guests. There's so many consistencies and same things we're doing today. I mean, obviously the methodology might change a little bit. Instead of a flip for a lamp, there might be more high-speed stuff.
Well, I fear today, with everybody carrying a cell phone, with cryptographic apps available to everybody, you can talk securely to anyone, anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Things have changed. But back in those days, this is what you had.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
imagine they're still utilizing some of those techniques to
Yeah.
completely avoid technology as a whole. because
Exactly.
Yeah.
If it's got a microphone, you're not the only person
I
listening.
mean, there's still some places that only use paper. You know, there's some facilities that you go in and it's pen and paper still,
yeah.
because you can't digitally pull that. So it's pretty interesting stuff. I love your time in Berlin. I think you probably experienced a lot of fun doing it too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was on the scuba team, and the scuba team had two attributes. It was the party team and the tough team. We were the only team that would consistently, on the worst day, go out and do our PT outside. If it was raining, we wouldn't do it, but if it was a blizzard, we would. If it was freezing cold, we'd do it.
Yeah.
And the other teams would go to the gymnasium. There was a big gymnasium not far away. You go in there and stay warm and do your PT, but not the scuba team. We'd be out there in the snow. And our commander, the team leader, went on to later on became the commander at Key West. And then he went on to do some Northern Virginia things. So
Okay.
I won't give you his name, but he's quite a guy. And he and I look at him as a big influence on me. And there's a lot of guys that I look on as influences, but he's definitely one of them.
Sure.
He was every team leader in a special forces team is a captain, Army captain, and we had some good ones. We had some that were a little quirky, but this guy was started off as enlisted, got a battlefield commission, and then moved on. And he almost never was able to get promoted because he didn't have the education. He didn't have a degree. And one of our team members, a medic who had a college degree, helped him get his degree because he was doing it through the University of Maryland classes there in Berlin. It was almost over more he could handle. So he owes this medic a lot.
Yeah.
He said, if I'm ever going to make major, I got to have a degree. Otherwise, I'm just going to be stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And
Makes sense, yeah.
he finally was able to get that degree.
That's incredible. So your time in Berlin shifted gears a little bit, and you decided to join 10th Group, and that's where you found your calling into being a pilot.
Yeah, after 4 years, it wasn't immediately. It was just because of having breakfast with Joey McDonald. And Joey, if you're out there, you can remember this. I will if you will. And off we went. And I remember one guy, as I was signing out on my way to Fort Rucker, one guy said, "Oh, I did that once. Everybody flunks instruments. You'll be back here. You'll flunk instruments too." I looked at the guy. I said, "Everybody flunks instruments?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Really? I'm sure that some don't, and I won't be back." So, and I didn't. I struggled, but I did get through it. Ranger school. Either one of you go to Ranger school?
I did, yes.
Okay, so I managed to miss Ranger school along the way, but in flight school, before I left, all my Ranger friends said, "Bob," and this is back when Ranger school had a Florida phase that included a air mobile activity.
Mhm.
And what the poor Ranger students didn't know is that none of the pilots who were flying that knew anything about what they were doing. We had never flown formations before. And so they taught us to fly formation flight. We had 30 aircraft flying from Fort Rucker to Florida, flying formation flights with, and I was one of the pilots that actually was flying that first leg. Had never flown in a formation before. At Fort Rucker, they wanted us to stay away from other aircraft. Don't get near another aircraft. And all of a sudden now you get close and fly like right on top of each other.
Yes.
So, and we all every flight had an instructor and a student, and there were two more students in the back. But what my Ranger friends said is when you go down there for the Florida flight, fill up the aircraft with all the pokey bait you can get, all the candy, all
Cowbirds.
yeah. Candy,
Cowbirds.
sandwiches, Cheetos, anything you can put in there. Just load it up because there will be none left.
Yeah.
It will get gobbled up. And we had to be careful because we had 3 pilots. That meant we had 3 sorties. So you could only give away 1/3 at a time. Otherwise, and the rule was the Rangers could eat as long as they were airborne.
Yeah, still that's same when I went in. That tradition continues. It does. And I got myself a Gatorade bottle and a couple slices of pizza.
Yeah, that's good. No Snicker bar?
No Snicker bar. They were eating up because I was the team leader and
Oh.
pushed everybody. And by the time that we even took off, it was all gone. I was like, what?
Lucky you got something.
One slice of pizza left.
Yeah, one slice of pizza.
Well,
A
anyway,
Gatorade frost.
that was there were some pilots that didn't believe me or just didn't have the interest, and they didn't bring anything. So I would not want to be on that aircraft.
Oh yeah,
Ranger
that's you just crushed souls.
yeah.
Just crushed souls.
Well, we were. I as far as I know, everybody I talked to, and I didn't talk to all of them. I did make an announcement. I said, "Send your wives," because at flight school we spent so much time we really didn't do anything else. Send your wives out to go to the PX and load up. It's like Halloween. Go get all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And load up our helmet bags with this stuff. And so we did, and we didn't. I couldn't see. I was flying, but after the next sortie went, I was watching these guys just stuff the stuff. It was like this, I don't know how many Rangers they could put on there. I guess 8 of them at a time.
I ate a whole jar of peanut butter after Mountain Face.
Oh, really?
Jiffy, the big tub.
Family size.
You'd throw up and you'd eat some more.
Well, that was my closest time with Ranger School, but I did my time in Ranger School. Probably earned an attaboy from some Ranger somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, so flight school. Everything was hard. I thought I'd be a natural. It turned out that my idea of what's good enough wasn't nearly good enough. The guy would say, "Give me 3 numbers. Fly this heading, this altitude, this speed. Not 1 knot faster, not 1 knot slower, not 1 foot higher, not 1 foot lower. And that compass heading, if it's 81 degrees, that's 81 degrees. It's not 82. It's not 80. Whatever." Come on.
Yeah.
Give me a break. And I got so intent this is a funny story. I haven't heard too many people tell a story like this. I got so intent on maintaining those 3 numbers that I would block out everything else. So it was because I didn't want to keep screwing up. Because when I scripted, the guy yelled at me. It was just awful. And this was in our little trainer, the TH-55. We called that the Mattel Messerschmitt. There's a little tiny thing with a bubble top.
Okay, yeah.
A little orange-looking thing. And reciprocating engine, and it had no fuel control. So you were the fuel control. I won't explain too much what that means, but it meant everything was hard. And I was so intent on those 3 numbers and just staring at it. And this was, by the way, this was during instrument. Was it instrument? No. It happened twice. But what I'm telling you right now was the instrument phase, because that's when I really had to be on the ball. I got yelled at a lot in the little Messerschmitt. This was in the Huey when I was doing instruments. The tower or the air traffic controller would call up, and there are like 100 aircraft up at the same time.
Yeah.
And every one of them is identified by their tail number. Army 537, turn right and climb, or turn right heading 150, climb 3,000. Your response is Army 135, right 150, climb 3,000. And that's it. You say that and you do it. I didn't do it. I didn't say it, and I didn't do it. And so here we're going along. And so the guy has forced to repeat. Army 357, turn right, climb. I didn't say anything. I'm staring at the numbers. I'm dead on. I'm feeling so proud of myself. I'm flying. I'm flying the heading.
Yeah.
And I'm on course, the right altitude. Everything is perfect. And the third time the guy calls up, my instructor, I'm wearing a hood.
Mm-hmm.
And there's cardboard in the window. So even if I peek, I can't see anything.
Yeah.
And there's chin bubble. It's got cardboard in it, so I can't see down there either. And I've got this hood on. So all I can do is look at a little tunnel vision of instruments. And all of a sudden, he's got this big map book. And he whacks me in the head with the map book. I mean, whack! And I'm flying, whack! And the hood comes right off my helmet and flies off into the back of the helicopter somewhere. I'm surprised it didn't go out the door because we flew the doors open. And he said, I've got the controls, which means hands off. He's got them. And he comes back and he says, Army 357, turning right, 150, climbing 3,000. And they say, Roger, 357. And he said, are you deaf? Didn't you hear him call you 3 times? And he was ranting. And he said, they don't tell you this just to hear themselves talk.
Yeah.
They tell you this because it's important. There's another aircraft probably needing the space you're in that you need to go pay attention to. And he said, I've had it with you. This is not the first time you've done this. You did it yesterday. And he says, I'm done with you. You're done. And then he calls up the tower and he says, cancel our flight plan. Well, that sounded bad because we were on a flight plan. We were flying to another city somewhere with another airport. Yeah. Now we canceled it. And then he just starts flying south. And then he starts an approach. And he lands in the middle of the woods somewhere in Alabama. I had no idea where. He says, get out. I said, well, he wants to fly the other guy. So I got out. And I start to get, he says, don't you get in my aircraft. And he said, you're the pilot now. So he gets out and I start to climb back. He says, I told you not to get in my aircraft. And then they take off and leave me there.
Oh, shit.
So I'm standing in somewhere in Alabama. I don't know where I'm at.
Yeah.
I really did not know. I have no clue where I was at. Yeah, somewhere. I knew kind of where I was, near the Florida border. I knew that much. I was near the corner of Florida and Georgia, in that little area, somewhere. And it turned out I was actually in Florida. I didn't know that. I was in Florida. And in the distance, I hear what sounds like a generator running. So I walk towards the sound, and after about 5 minutes, I come to this generator. And there's a Army commo van sitting there. And in the Army commo van was a guy operating this commo van. And what it wasn't a commo van, it was a mobile beacon, radio beacon for the aircraft, creating a place that they could fly to.
Okay.
Thank goodness. And he said, who are you? And I said, I'm a pilot. He said, what happened to your aircraft? He said, they left me here. He said, oh, you too, huh? He says, this happens all the time.
It's part of their training.
He said, just wait, they'll be back.
Yeah, they'll come back for you.
So,
oh, that's really funny, though.
yeah.
So just because you were task saturated a little bit, huh?
Yeah. And so when the guy got back, instead of even counseling me, he sent me to see the commander of the flight school. Or whatever that, he was some kind of commander. And they said, and I had what's known as the yellow slip, as opposed to the green one. It wasn't the pink one, it was the yellow one, which was, you're in serious trouble, but you're not dead yet.
Yeah. On your last leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I go in there and he says, so, Candidate Mitchell, Can't you hear? Yes, sir. Well, then why don't you, why are you not hearing? He said, I'll tell you what, no reason to answer that question. I'm sending you to the hospital to have your ears checked. So off I go to the hospital, and they take me over there. And he said, tomorrow when you come, bring your results from your hearing test. So I came back the next day. We go there in a bus, and I was like very sheepish, and I've got my perfect hearing slip. And they look at it, and they say, and I'm having it with the commander and my flight instructor again, and he says, well, obviously you just don't want to hear. You can't hear. You just choose not to. And he said, well, you have no more chances. You don't use them all up. The next time you fail to hear a ATC command, you're out of here.
Yeah.
I never not heard again. I may have flown crooked, but I did hear. It was one or the other. I couldn't do both.
Yeah.
So I did get through flight school, though. That was just one event.
Sure.
Graduation day came, and right before we got there, a guy came along and asked us how many of us wanted to get our commercial aviation license. We all did.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said, okay, if you will all be here on Saturday, or come to this motel. You pay me $35. Come to this motel, and I will give you training that allow you to go and take your commercial aviation test. And then the following Saturday or someday during the week, you can go and take the test over at Fort Rucker for your commercial aviation certificate if you pass the test. And he went through so much stuff as one day, and I was taking all these notes. It was talk from like 7 in the morning till 8 or 5 in the afternoon. It was long, yakety 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 yakety. I'm trying to get all this stuff down. A lot of it I already knew, but most of it I didn't, because I was learning military aviation, and this is for the real world aviation. And passed the test anyway. Got my commercial license for only for instrument. Commercial pilot, rotorcraft, only instrument, and I got that, and I still have it today, but I haven't flown in 30 years. So, Fort Rucker. I told you I left Devens after. I left after flight school. I got sent to from Rucker to Fort Hood, 1st Cavalry Division. They call themselves the first team. They're always claiming to be first at everything. And I felt very proud to be on that unit because it's a very storied unit. They got quite a reputation, and I did not realize at the time that they had changed from being a air mobile unit to an armored division. So their primary thing was now tanks. They had done away with their Vietnam air mobile thing. Yet they still had 2 vestiges of the old air mobile, and one of them was called the Gary Owen unit. You heard the Gary Owen song?
I've not heard the song.
Yeah, it's just da 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 da.
Okay.
It goes way back to the cavalry from Custer's day.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not a good place to be, but anyway, it's Custer.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Anyway,
different times.
different times. So that group was the ones we were flying around a lot. And I got so used to flying tight LZs at night with multiple aircraft, coming in with 4 aircraft tight at night into an area that was just big enough to hold them all. It was amazing. And we're not using night vision goggles. Later on, they did train us to night vision goggles, and I hated the things. We could see, but it's tunnel vision. You're looking, you got like a 40-degree, you have no peripheral vision, and you can't see your instruments.
Yeah.
Secondly, we had to block out, turn all the lights off and turn our instruments down so low, and then put tape over some of them so they wouldn't blind us. There's a big panel on an aircraft that's called a master caution panel. And if something goes wrong with the aircraft, it'll light up and you see this thing and it'll go whoop, 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 whoop. It's a warning that something, if it's bad, it'll do that. Otherwise, it just comes on. And we would take the Army green tape and cover the whole panel up with tape. And when those things would light up, you could see right through the tape because of the night vision goggles what it said. And so we could still see it. It wasn't blinding.
Yeah.
When we would land, we would have to have our crew chief. It took 3 people to fly night vision goggles. The pilot flying would be at the controls, and he would be flying. The co-pilot not flying was scanning left and right for trees and whatnot. The pilot's looking straight ahead. And the crew chief is looking at your airspeed and calling out the numbers to you and calling out your initial altitude. He'll be telling you that because you would normally be scanning that yourself, but you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
We had it turned off. And you just couldn't, and also you couldn't take your eyes if you did look down, you couldn't find yourself again if you looked up again.
Yeah.
So it took 3 people to fly night vision goggles. And it was tough. And I didn't like it. I would rather just fly in the dark.
Yes, especially those early generation night vision goggles. They were not good.
Yeah. They were heavy. And we had to put a big counterweight on the back of our helmets
Keep it from falling down.
to balance out the goggles in the front.
Yeah.
So everybody had these big old Velcro patches on the back of their helmet. And we would take these weights and put them back here to keep our head, balanced. It was just heavy on both sides.
Still do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hasn't changed.
Yeah, a little lighter now, but
Yeah.
and nowadays you have the white phosphorus and you have peripherals.
Oh,
Yeah, and those are heavy.
So you have 4 tubes
Well,
essentially.
that'd be good.
Yeah, and they come in a single tube actually with 2 screens in them, so they give you complete peripheral vision and 3D spatial awareness.
Yeah, you get about 170 degrees field of vision with those, but they are quite heavy. Quite heavy, yeah.
They're also about $43,000 a piece.
Yeah.
We had 6 of ours go missing out of the platoon once. And at that time, I think they were $6,000 a piece. So that's $36,000. And the IP that taught it got blamed. And I don't know whatever happened to him. He'd be bankrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a serious violation. You'd still get canned pretty hard for that nowadays.
Yeah.
Now, so after your initial training, you took that to South America too, correct?
Yeah. In the first cab, we had deployed twice down there. The first time was to just strictly Honduras, where we went to this jungle area right on the El Salvador border, where we were training El Salvadorian troops in air mobile operations with special forces as the instructors. We were just there to fly. And they would come across the border, march across the border, and meet up with us. And we did this for quite a while, and it was really, and we always were armed because we were right on the border. We carried with us an infantry company, and every flight we made, we would have 2 door gunners with M60 machine guns. And because of the fact that we were right on the border. And in that area down there, the border was really not clearly defined. People just go where they want to go.
Yeah.
There's no painted line on the ground there where you could tell where you were at. And we did that until they ran out of troops for us to train. And then we went back and to Fort Hood. Then they sent us down again later in the same year. We did the first one in the spring, the second one was in the fall,
What year was this?
84.
84, okay.
And this time they sent us to this place called Palmarola, which is in the center of Honduras, where we were to support a whole different type of missions. We had missions in Guatemala, El Salvador, and along the Nicaraguan border that we would fly each day.
This is counter drug.
A little bit of everything.
This had to have been during the time with the Nicaraguan uprising and the rebels, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was exactly what it was. And every time, and we also had there was in the Bay of Fonseca, which is this bay between Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador. There's a bay there, Bay of Fonseca. In the middle of it, there's a place called Tiger Island. And we had a company of Marines on the top of that island, and we had CIA at the very tip top and at the bottom. And it was a CIA listening post.
Okay.
Also at the bottom of Tiger Island, we had these mosquito boats, these fast boats with 50 caliber machine guns and radar on it that we were operating there. That I wasn't, but they were.
Sure.
And anything at night that was out there just got shot up because they said that the entire Bay of Fonseca was off limits at night. If you were out there, you're going to get shot up.
Yeah.
And these things would go out there, and they had radar on these like a 20-foot or 23-foot long flat bottom speedboat with a 50 caliber machine gun on it, or a couple of them. And we had special forces and the Honduran military. The island was Honduran, so the special forces in Honduran were operating those boats. We would make daily mail runs to the top of Tiger Island, and I made one of them that turned into I violated common sense and all the rules on that one because the entire island was completely clear of clouds, except from about 200 feet to the top, and about 1,000 feet above it.
Okay.
It was a cloud on it, and we kept flying around the island, waiting for it to blow away. It wouldn't go anywhere. It just stayed put. It was just there, and I didn't want to run out of fuel. I said, okay, we'll just. I've been up here so many times I can get up there. So I went to the base of the island and started hovering up, hovered into the clouds, and came all the way to the very top, set it down on the little landing pad up there. And some captain came out there. He said, "My goodness, you got a set of brass ones."
Yeah.
we exchanged the stuff we had to exchange, and then we took off. And I told the co-pilot, and I was flying left seat. I think I mentioned to somebody earlier that there's a reason why I'll get to that in a second. Flying left seat, and I had my co-pilot flying the right seat, which is the actual command pilot seat, but I was the command pilot. I said, okay, we'll just do a standard instrument takeoff, and I can't do it from here. You have to do it from there because you have the better upgrade instruments over there. Any problem with that? Otherwise, we can shut it down, and I'll sit over there. He says, no, I can do it. I said, okay. So, and I watched him, and he did a perfect instrument takeoff, and took off and went straight on up, and I was watching the instruments, and we had positive rate of climb. Everything was perfect, and we finally climbed out of the clouds and went on back. But all that was not to be done. We shouldn't have done that. But anyway, we did it. No one knew about it. I said, don't tell anybody we did this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
VFR, mostly.
Mostly
VFR.
Right seat, left seat, just a helicopter trivia question. If you go fly in an airplane, command seat's a left seat. And it's because typically most airport traffic's left traffic. So if you're flying left traffic, it means you fly to the airport, you make a left turn to go to what's called the base turn, and then another left turn to final on the runway and land. You can make right traffic too, but then it's easier if the co-pilot does that because he can see better. In a helicopter, they switched it because the Huey's rated for one pilot, but we preferred to have two. And they put him on the right side because if you're flying single pilot, you have your right hand on a collective, which is a stick. We got a cyclic, which is just a stick. The left hand is the collective. The collective is something you can set and forget. You can pull it up and it'll just stay put.
Yeah.
And that's power. It changes the pitch of the blade, but because of fuel control, it also increases the fuel flow so that the RPM is always the same. You just increase the torque. And if you have to change anything like a radio frequency or turn a transponder on or off or change this or do whatever, you have your left hand free to push on any button over here.
Yep.
All your radios, your all your buttons to push and things to do are over here. If you're flying the right side, you have cyclic, collective.
You have to reach across your body.
You have to go, let go of this, grab this with your left hand, which your left hand doesn't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It just never learned.
Yeah.
It doesn't know. It's just too hard to do it this way. And then you go over here, and you're looking over here. Everything goes squirrely. And when you're doing it this way, it's easy. So they just put the command pilot on the right side and avoid that problem. That's why helicopters, pilots, in almost all cases, there's command seat's the right seat.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so El Salvador. Finally got to go to El Salvador. First of all, we kept 55 permanent party people in El Salvador because Congress passed a law saying that we could not have another Vietnam. So we could not have any more than 55 soldiers at any one time in El Salvador because they were afraid they would just get mission creep.
Sure. Yeah.
You have 55 now, and tomorrow 105, and pretty soon we got 50,000.
Yeah.
At 55, we're all special forces, and they were A-teams and all around the country. And but support people didn't count because they were all TDY. I was a support person. So me being there didn't count on the 55. The entire aviation unit that was there was not counted.
TDY, yeah.
And the cooks were TDY, and the medics were TDY. The only people that actually counted was those 55 Special Forces guys. Everybody else was TDY. They must have had 3,000 or 4,000 people there. Only 55 of them counted. So we would go in, stay for a while, then leave, then come back, stay and leave. We stayed at great accommodations. We were in the El Presidente Hotel in San Salvador. We were always armed. We never did not go anywhere without our sidearm, which pilots carry 38s, revolvers. And by the way, they were afraid that a pilot being ill-equipped to know how to use a gun would shoot himself with an automatic or shoot a passenger.
Oh, no.
So they gave him a gun that they thought was pilot-proof, which was a revolver. So we had 38s.
That's funny.
So we had to carry these little what we call these little airline tote bags, little small ones. Everybody in this hotel was walking around with a tote bag with their sidearm.
Yeah, the gun.
It looked funny. We would take we would go to the bar, take a little bag, go anywhere, have dinner, have a bag. The only problem was when we would go swimming in their really nice pool, we couldn't take that, so we'd have to have somebody in charge of all the bags while we would swim.
That's funny.
That was, and this was in '84, but we would get our missions, go out to El Pago Airport, and we would drive in our own vehicles, but they were hardened Jeep Wagoneers, hardened Kevlar. You couldn't see through any of the glass. It was this thick. The little tiny porthole for the driver to look out and see where he's going. We were told to never stop at a stop sign or a red light. Just plowing through. Everybody did that anyway down there, but just keep right on going.
And
never take the same route to get there. It took a half hour to get to the airport, and then coming back, and we would do this twice a day, to there and back again. After we get our missions and we go do our thing. And one of my more interesting missions down there was to help create bug-out plans. You know what a bug-out plan is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they wanted to redo all the bug-out plans. And so I got the mission to go and interview every team leader at every Special Forces site and come up with the bug-out plans. The only one that was complicated was a place called San Francisco de Gatera, of the northeastern corner of El Salvador. It was the only one that was so hot they couldn't put it outside the city. It was in a city surrounded by the city. And there was no good place for a bug out plan. The area around there was just too hot.
Sure.
Too many bad guys around there. And we came there that day, and we couldn't land in the city. We had to land outside, and they brought some of their guys to watch our aircraft while they took us into the city, into their facility, which was just a building that had a metal roof on top, and it was 2 stories. And I said, let's go on the roof. And I looked at the roof. I walked up on the roof. It was a slanted roof, and believe it or not, you can shoot guns from a slanted roof, and you can walk on them.
It's not what
And
I heard.
I stood and jumped up and down, and I said, we can get 1 skid down here.
Okay, yeah.
We can get 1 skid down here. They said, okay, done. So our bug out plan is to go to the roof.
Single
We'll call
skid.
you come, put a skid down, and we'll be up here. We'll bug out.
Yeah,
And that was the bug out. Everybody else had, a click away somewhere.
sure.
And then there was a backup. Santa Rosa de Cotera, or San Francisco de Cotera only had 1 bug out plan. There was not another one. And never used it, though. But I had to document all those things, get them to sign off on it. I took them back and got them recorded and turned in. And they would probably keep those until a new team arrived or whatever.
Yeah.
They would revise them every now and then. But that was pretty good. I did that. Before we went down there, where they had to teach us how to fly in the mountains. But I didn't need the training because I had already learned. I had a special assignment along with 4 other pilots, 4 other crews. We flew helicopters from Fort Hood to Fort Irwin, California.
Yeah.
And you've been to Fort Irwin? Okay. Desert Training Center. And it didn't exist at that time.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. It had nothing. It was just dirt.
Yeah.
They were building it, and what they wanted to do is put all these sensors in all the mountains all around, these laser things and camera things and solar cell things and all over. And at the very top, there's a T-Fort mountain that had a big receptor, and it would catch everything and then shoot it down to the bottom of the mountain at Bicycle Lake, where they would put it all on a big computer screen and whatever. And then the idea was that, which they eventually were able to do, everything would start where it was like a big laser tag game. And every soldier would be wearing laser tag, what you call them, receptors.
Sure.
And transponders.
Okay.
And but our job was to get the guys up there to blast flat spots. So we were hauling up cement mixers, barrels of water, and crews carrying their materials.
Okay.
And we did this for 4 months.
Cargo slinging in the mountains?
Cargo slinging.
That's good flying.
Oh, yeah. And it was always in the mountains, and there was never any place to land. So we would get good at landing 1 skid, letting the guys get off, or just dropping it down with a sling.
Yeah.
And we did that for 4 months out there. And the General Dynamics had the contract for that, and they when they bid on it, they said, well, we're going to need like so many $1 million for aircraft support, so we're going to hire our pilots, and we'll lease these aircraft. And Army says, we can give you all the aircraft for free.
We got helicopters and pilots.
Well, yeah. just tell me how many helicopters you want, how many pilots you want, and you can. So take that off of your quote.
Yeah.
So that was good for us. Anyway, while I was out there, I was there so long. Me and another guy named Boyce Bingham, who's now a bush pilot in Alaska, got our fixed wing ticket. We went into the little flight service center at Barstow-Daggett Airport and asked the guy, what would it take for 2 helicopter pilots with commercial licenses to become fixed wing rated? Because we weren't. He said, I'll tell you tomorrow. Come back and ask me. He said, it's pretty easy, about 10 hours of flying, instructing. And then you have to pass a check ride. Plus you have to have another 10 hours of solo time.
It's not bad.
And he charged us dirt cheap, $25 an hour wet,
Oh, yeah.
and $35 if he was instructing. It was cheap.
So all in $800, $900.
It was cheap.
Yeah.
So we did that, and we got our fixed wing ticket while we were out there, and on 152s. So down in Honduras on my second trip, they created the new Special Forces Warrant Officer Program. They were having a hard time finding qualified people. I heard about it, and I wanted to know if I was qualified. And I was able to contact a guy. I actually could go into our, MASH again, MASH. I could go into our command tent, and I asked, I need to talk to somebody in the Pentagon. Pentagon? Yeah, who? I want to talk to Mr. Ryder. He's in the Special Forces Warrant Officer Department. And so after about 20 minutes, hey, I got Mr. Ryder on the phone. It's like radar violet. It's crazy. So I'm talking to Mr. Ryder, and I said, hey, this is Bob Mitchell. I'm in Honduras right now, but I'd like to find out more about this warrant officer program. And he said, oh, Bob, you're a pilot, right? I said, because he was the one I had to see when I was at Devon's, the same guy. He just moved on down there. He was a W4.
Okay.
And he said, well, you gotta have certain things. You gotta have 10 years in SF. You gotta have at least one extra skill, either scuba or halo. And I had the scuba. He said, prefer a language. I have German. And then here's the hard one. Oh, you have to have a absolutely perfect record. And I said, of course. It really wasn't that perfect, but it was good enough. And you have to have attended O&I school. O&I is Operations and Intel School. It's 4-month school. 2 weeks out at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, 2 months there, and the 2 months at Fort Bragg, where you learn operations and intel. And the intel was at Fort Huachuca, and I had lucked into that back right after I got at Devon's, the first in '76. I lucked into it. I put my name on the list. They said, you'll be lucky if you get to go in 3 years. There's a big list. 3 months later, they sent me because everybody was sick or on TDY somewhere, and they had a slot. So I went. And when he found out I had, they said, Mitch, we can't find qualified people. We'd love to have you. I said, well, I'm on flight status. He said, well, I don't know if we can work that or not, but let's find out. So it turned out, when I finally got back from Honduras, they were still after me. And they said, why don't you come and visit us at Fort Bragg? So I got a chance to go up to TDY, and they said, we think you can do this. And they wanted to put me through this 2-week school that was the tail end of the first 6 weeks that they'd already trained this first or second class of warrant officers through. And so I had just the 2 weeks, which included a parachute jump out at Camp McCall. And I said, I'm not on airborne status anymore. I said, we can fix that. So they cut orders on me and put me on airborne status. And I'm wearing a first cab patch. I got wings, but I'm not airborne. But suddenly I was for one day. I went out there. It was an exercise. We had to go out there and do a jump and do some sort of exercise.
Okay.
At McCall. Came back and then I waited for orders, and finally I got the orders to send me to Fort Devens. I asked for Fort Devens because I liked it, and I got assigned to a team. And right after I got put on the team, I got the first thing we did there is when I first introduced myself to the new team, I said, I'm Mr. Mitchell, and they call warrant officers chief in the Army, except in aviation. Nobody gets called chief.
Mr.
It's Mr.
Or Miss, yeah.
Yeah. But in the rest of the Army, a warrant officer is chief. And I was used to not being called chief, so I was a little offended by it at first because of my aviation culture. And I finally got used to it. And I introduced myself, and the first thing they wanted to do was send us to an area study on our target country, which was Poland, which was like 2 weeks of intense, everything you can possibly learn about Poland. And their culture, their people, whatever, and then follow it up with an exercise. And when it came time for the exercise, I got taken off because they needed me to become a evaluator for another team. The exercise was called Flintlock. You start off in England, you go to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't get to go with the team that I had done the area study with. But I got to evaluate somebody else. And when I got through with that, they wanted to send us to Danish Scout Swimmer School, which I've been trying to avoid forever.
Scout Swimmer School?
Yeah. Scout Swim School is what Danes call scuba school. They don't scuba.
Mm-hmm.
They swim around on the surface and call it scuba.
So snorkeling.
Not even snorkeling. You just swim on the surface. And you sneak around and wear a net over your head, and you look like seaweed. But the thing that they do is they make you swim 10 Ks to infill. 10 Ks is a long swim. It's a 6-mile swim.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And you're wearing a dry suit. And I didn't want to do that so bad because I'm a scuba man, and I don't want to be up there on top of the water.
Yeah. Especially for 6 miles
Yeah.
swimming.
And they run us around we carried logs where we go. The whole thing was tough. And then we had to go and swim on the surface. And I hated that. But we got the team prepared for it. Now, a lot of the stuff that they had us do was underwater swimming anyway. And I was able to help the team with that because a lot of guys just couldn't swim. That was I forgot how far it was. 30 meters. It's a long swim underwater.
Yeah.
30-meter swim underwater on one breath.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Still part of the standards today
Yeah.
in some of the areas. Yeah.
yeah. So, and some guys kept doing it, and the 10-mile swim was also timed. Had to be done in 4 hours, or I guess it was 5 hours. I forget. Whatever it was, I just barely made it.
Yeah.
It was tough. I mean, I hated that. I hate swimming on the surface. We were wearing fins, but even still, we were on our back.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And we did cast and recovery off of this boat that killed us. It was going way too fast. And anyway, so my time at Fort Devens was great. And then our commander got promoted out of the team up to battalion headquarters. And for the next 11 months, I was the team leader. So I was actually the only officer on the team. And it was a pretty good team. And then we took the team up on a ski trip. And being an instructor, I was able to lead that. And then I broke my leg. Broke it bad. I broke the tibia fibula, and it turned it all the way around the wrong way.
Oh, man.
We were skiing rucksacks and leather boots called Hanbok boots and these White Star skis. It's primitive. And when they took me to the hospital, the doctor at this hospital in New Hampshire had to cut my boot off. He said, "Where are your ski boots? Why are you wearing these boots?" I said, "That is my ski boot." He said, "You've got to be kidding. Nobody wears this." I said, "Well, the Army does."
Yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah.
So, and he said, your X-rays are, you don't have both your bones are just crumpled up. They're just messed up bad. And I could do surgery, or any orthopedic guy could do surgery on something that's more straightforward, but they can't do surgery on this. You're going to have a long cast and let it just heal itself. And so this was in January. I was still in that cast in, I think in July.
Oh, wow.
It's a long time. I
That's
finally
a
got it
long
off in
time.
August, and I wasn't able to walk. In fact, that whole time I was doing that, I couldn't be on duty.
Yeah.
There was nothing I could do. So I went to the education center and I started taking courses.
Hmm.
And about this time, I decided I think I'm going to get out because I
Right.
can't figure out if this is going to ever get better.
You're rounding 20 years at this
Yeah,
point,
I was
too,
right
right?
at 20, getting
Yeah.
up. I was planning on staying long. I had put in and gotten approved for a regular Army warrant officer, which is a pretty good thing to do if you're wanting to stick around for a long time.
Sure.
And
A lot of those guys do 30 years,
Yeah.
35, some of them.
yeah, so I was a regular Army warrant,
Hmm.
and but then I got the education guy gave me so many things to do, and he let me do a thing called a program on how to decide what it is you want to do in your next life.
Hmm.
It was a program called "What Color Is Your Parachute," and it has another name too, but it had me evaluate myself on everything, and I had to write it all down and fill out this big matrix and write down things all over the matrix, and then he evaluated it for me. He told me, well, here's what it looks like you should be doing this, and I didn't want to sit in an office,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be busy and using whatever. So I finally told him I want to get out. I'm retired at 20 because I just couldn't seem to heal. And I thought I'd get a disability, but they didn't give me one because it seemed like just a month before I was to get out, a switch flipped in my leg. No more pain. Like I couldn't do a facing movement. I couldn't do a right face or a left face without it killing me. It just hurt too much.
Yeah.
After they took the cast off, I had to just kind of step around to do that, and then all of a sudden it quit. And I was a W-2, and I was on a W-3 list. And in order for me to retire, I had to write a letter saying I want to refuse my promotion.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't have W-4 yet.
Mm.
Hadn't come up with that. So I retired as a W-2 in the third. They gave me whatever difference in pay. So I went home, retired, and I went back to college. And I got a bachelor's degree at North Texas in manufacturing engineering. I went to work immediately for a company, stayed there 5 years doing manufacturing. They called me an industrial engineer. That was my title, was industrial engineer. And I moved into the quality area while I was there, and I became the quality manager. And then I went to an automotive company and helped them achieve an ISO 9001 certification, if you have any idea what that is. And that became my niche. And I finally found I could keep getting hired by people who wanted to get certified to ISO 9001 because I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
And
It's not an easy process either.
and once you get it, you got to maintain it. And I got to where I was able to do it. I did that 5 times. I put 5 companies through, and each time I would stay there long enough until I could find a better place. And I worked at Nokia. That was the only place I went to where I didn't have to put it in. They just wanted me to maintain it. And I stayed there until they moved the plant from Fort Worth to Mexico. They were out at the Alliance Airport area. They had a 600,000 square foot facility there. And they moved it to Mexico. And then I spent the last, I retired from everything in 2015 and working for the company that was oil and gas primarily, but the same kind of a job and just doing ISO stuff. But it paid well and it was easy once you did it the first time. All the rest were just the same thing.
Sure.
And you have to. The only thing I had hard times with was getting the culture of the company to buy into it, because it's rules.
Yeah.
Rules that you have to follow, and being in aviation, even though I broke rules while I was in aviation, I told you about one. I never failed to properly pre-flight.
Sure.
I never failed to properly plan. Every time I flew, the only thing I did was every now and then I would cut a corner maybe.
Sure.
But
Diligence and attention to detail. That's aviation.
yeah,
So that's quite an extensive career that you had. I'm sure it was not. I mean, you did 20 years after that 2015 you retired. Probably not as exciting as your time in the military.
no. Although when I was at Nokia, they sent me all over the world. Well, they were getting ready to send me to China. I just got sent to Korea, Mexico, several times, Brazil, Hungary, back to Germany, and I went to Finland twice, and to do audits on factories. So
at least you get to see a little bit more of the corners of the world without guns. But
by the way, I'm wearing a Honduras shirt.
oh, fantastic!
Oh, yeah.
I bought this in Honduras 2 years ago. I have been to Honduras since I went there that first time. I kind of fell in love with the place. I've been back there a dozen times,
Really?
going down there to do mission work.
Okay.
And since 2004, that was 20 years after my first visit in '84.
So, like church missions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hard work.
Yeah.
And the last time I was there was 2021, and I think it's my last time. I think I've reached my limit. That's when I bought this shirt. But I've seen the changes in it. There was a time 20 years ago, nobody had anything. Yeah, out in the villages where we worked.
Yeah.
No electricity. The roads were non-existent. They were just dirt.
Yeah.
No running water. Now they're starting to get that stuff. And today, even if they don't have anything else, everybody has a cell phone.
Yeah.
And they have access to it. And that's changed the culture. Nobody wants to stay there in the village anymore. They want to get out and go somewhere.
Go to the cities.
Come to the United States.
Travel the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the cell phone has totally changed the world because nobody
Absolutely.
wants to stay in their little village anymore. Where that's all they knew. All they knew was that mountain there, and the fact that they got a crop they got to grow.
It's made the world
It's
a
all
lot
changed.
smaller.
Yeah, and that's a topic, a whole nother topic we could spend a whole another podcast on.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for sharing your story, and I mean, quite extensively, 2 parts. Really interesting career, absolutely amazing things on kind of how things shifted, the similarities that are out there in existence now with Green Berets. And I know that you're also involved with the Special Forces Association. So still continuing to serve and keep plugged into that community. So thank you again for being on and sharing.
Yeah, and I turned over my duties to John Kennard. He is now our new vice president.
Okay.
I was the vice president. They wanted me to be the president. I told them no.
I'm done working.
I don't want to do that. So we got Zach to do that. But
Fantastic.
You guys got some good leadership there.
well, I told them we need to get people who aren't in their 70s in this organization.
Some
'Cause
younger blood.
all our guys were getting way too old,
Sure.
like me.
But
Anyway.
you guys are still serving even late into that age.
Yeah.
You're still putting in the time. So Bob, truly thank you for coming on today. Thank you for everything that you've done in your past. Yeah, I really think that you forged the way for a lot of things in the military, special operations, aviation. You've done some of the most amazing things that I've ever had the pleasure of hearing. So thanks for sharing today.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
So did we. This has been the Medevac podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening this week. Keep in mind, there is a price for the show. You have to share this with a friend or family member, interact with the content somehow. You know we'd do the same for you. We'll see you guys next week.
See you next time.